Welcome everyone to this special interview edition of Monday Match Analysis. Today's episode is our traditional post-major chat with Steve Flink, wrapping up our coverage of Wimbledon 2025. We're going to talk about the Sinner-Alcaraz final. We'll lead with that. We'll do a little Djokovic talk. We'll hit Fritz, Draper, Zverev, Medvedev, Tsitsipas, Cobolli, Bublik. I think that is everything, but I may have missed some stuff. There will be timestamps if you want to skip around, but as always, it was a very enjoyable chat. So without further ado, here is Steve Flink. Every Wimbledon final is so significant, holds so much historical weight, no matter what it is. But in terms of what it means for the future and kind of what we take away from it, other than the fact that Jannik Sinner is Wimbledon champion for the first time in his career, has won major number 4, I think it's easy to overreact to big results here. Roland Garros final, Wimbledon final, it doesn't matter. I want to ask you, how big was your reaction to this result in the final?
Well, I don't know what your thoughts have been, even though we have talked a lot about it after some of their matches, and obviously we dissected the match at Roland Garros. My feeling was that in the 5-match streak that Carlos managed to pull off, that Sinner should have won at least a couple of times, and so I thought it was important for him in the rivalry. That to me is that's what's most significant about this result, is that Sinner get back on the board. He had one time led Carlos 4-3 in the rivalry, despite that U.S. Open 22 loss when he had a match point and couldn't get across the finish line. So even with that, he had gone ahead 4-3, and then Carlos goes ahead 8-4. Now Sinner back on the board. I thought that was important in terms of going forward, the two of them pushing each other, particularly important for Sinner to have that belief, because it has to get in your head, Gill. Even as strong-minded, as resolute as he is, when you lose to your chief rival that many times in a row, and 4 of the 5 times you won the first set, and Beijing, you're serving a 3-love in the final set tiebreak, double mini break, and you don't win that. And French Open a year ago, 2-1 up, couldn't close him out in the semis. So I look at that, all those matches, and all tremendous efforts from Carlos to win, but I just felt like if it happens again now, then the psychological impact, it could have some lasting consequences. I think Sinner, I really thought the whole way Sinner comported himself, Gil, told me that he believed that there was an urgency to this particular match, not just because it was a Wimbledon final, but the nice reward for him is he ends the losing streak. He stops Carlos from winning 3 titles in a row. He hands Carlos his first loss in a Grand Slam final, which Carlos had done to Jannik in Paris. And he wins the biggest match they've ever played against each other. So there were so many ramifications. That's how. Now I get your point. I don't think that means that Sinner now runs off 5 in a row. I don't think that means that. I just think it means he's back in it. He believes again. Carlos, I don't think is shaken by it. I think Carlos has great inner belief himself. But I think it's so healthy for the rivalry, because I do believe there's a pretty darn good chance we're going to get these two again in New York in the U.S. Open final. No guarantees, but I see them meeting in a 3rd Grand Slam final if I had to project it right now.
It's definitely healthy for the rivalry, and I think even more important for Sinner to get Alcaraz off of hard court at a tournament that he was back-to-back defending champion on.
Right.
So it lends even more credence to the win, because had Sinner not won, regardless of what he did over the course of the next several months on the hard courts, there would have been accusations or there would have been a thought that Alcaraz is still king of the natural surfaces.
Yes.
And right. Sinner can say, well, beat him in the Wimbledon final.
And he can know as well that he was agonizingly close to it. He didn't lose Roland Garros because of the surface. He lost it because of the pressure, because of Carlos performing so well in the clutch himself. There were a variety of things, but I think a match that close that goes to tiebreak in the 5th set and 5.5 hours and 3 match points for Sinner, I think he proved to himself there, and even last year, by the way, when he took him to 5, that he can still beat him on clay, even though Carlos has been so extraordinary on both the clay and the grass. And now he's definitely righted the ship to beat him on the lawns of Wimbledon. And of course, the good news, Gill, is going forward, they are going onto the hard courts. So it's back. He has always excelled on hard. He's won the last two Aussie Opens. He won the U.S. Open last year. He's been the king of hard courts at the majors. So that's another one of the that's another significant aspect of this outcome.
How do you think grass impacted the actual match? Because I think coming in, Carlos being back-to-back Wimbledon defending champion, two-time Queen's champion, that made it really hard for us to claim that grass was going to somehow hurt Carlos in this head-to-head. But beyond the results being what they were and the resumes being what they were, looking at this matchup, I think grass does hurt Carlos a little bit in this head-to-head because it is on the faster side. And I think Sinner wants speed.
I agree with you. I had a discussion with one of my colleagues. I don't want to mention his name right now. I don't think it would be fair because I haven't cleared it with him. But we were having this discussion last year, and I was sorry that Carlos and Jannik, of course, was kind of sick at last year's Wimbledon and a little dizzy when he lost to Medvedev. I was kind of lamenting that they hadn't played that because I said, I honestly think Sinner, he can do it against him on grass. And my friend, who's quite knowledgeable, was very dismissive, didn't buy it. But now this is twice. This is the two of them much younger. They're much better now, but nonetheless, they played in 22, and Jannik won in 4 sets then, and now he's done it again. And I agree with your point. The quickness actually works in Sinner's favor, and I think it was demonstrable in the way that he served Gill. I mean, who would have thought that he was going to suddenly lose his serve 2 times running from 4-2 up in the first set? That was kind of a surprise development. But then never again the rest of the way, and barely faced a break point early in the second set, and one more late in the fourth at 4-3, 2 more at 4-3 at 15-40. But otherwise, he was holding pretty comfortably, and his serve got better and better. He located it better and better, and I honestly thought that to me was the most telling part of the match. And I think he put tremendous pressure on Carlos by holding so easily himself. And I think that's one of the reasons why Carlos struggled so much on serve. Don't you agree with that?
I do. I want to dig into Alcaraz's serving in more detail in a moment. But on the Sinner front, he served 62%. We talked after Roland Garros about how that percentage in the Alcaraz matches were very, very low. He needed to reverse that.
Right.
And I thought it was a really good serving day because he is so precise with his first serve. But he also hits his second serve hard, and it's difficult to attack. And Alcaraz, he was shaken on the second serve and started to hit some slower kicks that Sinner ended up being able to attack, which I think that exacerbated the difference in the first serve level, is that even on second serve, I think there was a difference in quality there between the two. Sinner was holding easily. And that contributed to the feeling throughout sets 2 to 4 that that Sinner had a real handle on the match. Do you agree?
Totally agree. I completely agree. And you talk about how precise he is with the serve. I agree. I thought in the first set he compromised a bit, Jannik. And I think that may have been one of the reasons why he lost serve 2 times running. One of the factors, because I just thought that he wasn't getting nearly the free points that he should have. And that all changed in the last 3 sets. To me, it got progressively better. And that's when he started serving some of his aces, more service winners. I think I had the feeling early on he was more interested in what you were talking about. I got to keep my first serve percentage high. I've got to keep it at least in the 60s. I'm not going to give him those looks at second serves. But then I didn't think the first serves were executed as well as they could have been. But that was not the case at all across the last 3 sets. So, yes, I do agree.
I thought the only thing that Sinner did out of the box, very different than anything I would have expected, was how often he came forward. He ends up 40 times at the net. I believe Alcaraz ended up at the net 23 times. You would have never have guessed that. So often behind his serve after the first shot, he was up, he was forward, and it minimized Alcaraz's defense. That's the one thing I pinpoint as far as, like, if I look at what did Sinner do that's out of the ordinary, that to me is the thing.
I agree. I agree. And I've had a few other people make that comment to me as well about the 40 times and great percentage. I thought a lot of it had to do with his own depth. Jannik's depth was so good off the ground, and he's constantly backing Carlos up. And then he was able to get some mid-court balls that were easy and natural for him to attack. But that didn't mean he was going to win that many points if he hadn't executed well at the net, and he did. He was terrific up there. So yes, that and the serving. I mean, I know Jimmy Connors on his podcast made a big deal about the return. It's always the return, and he did. And Carlos mentioned that he thought that Jannik did a better job on second serve returns, but I still say it was the Sinner serving that made the biggest difference of all, and that's a comfort level he didn't have in any of the recent matches against Carlos. And maybe some of it did have to do with, maybe it was the speed of the courts, the conditions of the courts, who knows? But I thought he really rose to the occasion in that department.
He was able to play so much offense because the serve was setting him up well, the return was setting him up well. I had the same read on the disparity in net rushing. I don't think it's as if Carlos was hanging back. It's just he didn't have an opportunity to take control of points as often as Sinner did. Yeah. But I also think it's a great thing by Jannik to just negate some of Alcaraz's defense by coming in, because Carlos does defend so well even on the grass.
Yeah, and Gil, then the other thing in addition to that, I thought from early on, Sinner was showing you that he was going to take that backhand down the line as often as he could, and I thought he did that much better than Carlos overall. And I thought that was another key, is he used it at the right times and he hit it so well. The first match point, he was a bit unlucky because Carlos went cross-court to the turn, and Jannik tried to take that one down the line. It could well have been a winner. He hit the net tape. But there were so few like that, and he had so many good ones close to the sideline that left Carlos very compromised.
On the Alcaraz side of things, there was obviously a negativity that seeped into his overall presentation on the court pretty quickly. So that's one aspect. The first serve percentage at 53%, that's not ideal. You certainly saw his variety negated to a certain extent. The drop shots weren't effective. There wasn't a lot of slice. You're not going to use the high ball much on grass. So all of these things that you could point to from Alcaraz's side of the net that didn't go his way. How like when you assess some of those factors, how much of those were earned by Sinner? What areas do you feel like Carlos as an individual performer didn't live up to it when he had a chance?
I guess I tipped the scales largely on the positive end for Sinner. I mean, I felt from early on he showed he was determined to go really chase those drop shots down, to try to make a play on. You know how Carlos, it's so good at times that you don't even want to make a move. You feel it's like it's futile. Even the best players can feel that way at times. But Sinner was like, no, I'm going after all of these, and I'm going to show him that he better make those drop shots letter perfect, because if he doesn't, I'm going to get there and do something special with it. And I'm going to, and I think that got in Carlos's head a bit, because he has to drop shot as well as he does. He's got to be relaxed, and he was not. He was apprehensive. And you talked about his mood. There's no doubt it's you felt that seep in at a certain stage of the second set. And I mean, obviously he had the great run at the end of the first set and made that spectacular winner off his back in when Jannik hit the running forehand down the line on set point in the first set. So great kind of flourish at the end of the set for Carlos. That's when he was feeling his best and putting his fingers up to his ears to tell the crowd to cheer. But thereafter, the mood darkened a lot. And you're right. And I think part of it was things like that you just mentioned. Not being comfortable on the drop shot, feeling like he had to make it a little better than usual. And then also not being able to figure out in his mind how to stop Jannik from coming forward more. And that gets back to what we were just talking about. It was kind of forced upon him. Jannik was hitting the ball so hard and deep. And I think he's underestimated that way. I felt that when he's at his best, that's an edge he can have over Carlos. Carlos is such an artist. And there are times you watch those rallies and Carlos starts getting into a rhythm. And then he increases the pace of his shots and the depth, and it's all flowing. But that's not the consistent force that we get from Sinner, point in and point out. So I guess, Gil, I don't know how you feel. What I like most about Carlos is he may be a dreamer, but he's a realist. he does not kid himself about what's being thrown at him or delude himself. And I think that contributed to the negativity.
Yeah, I think he wasn't enjoying the feeling of the points. Like that was my read on it was that he felt so stripped of oxygen. And when I say oxygen, I really just mean time on the ball.
Right.
That he felt like it was being taken out of his hands to an extent that really bothered him. And that's where I think he started to force some drop shots. Like a lot of these drop shots, these weren't off of forehands where he had a lot of time on the ball and he could load up and threaten with the power and then
Right.
change to the drop shot. Like
Yeah.
they were balls that were coming quick where he was on the baseline or behind the baseline. Like, that's why the drop shot, in my opinion, that's why the drop shot wasn't working. And I think even on the first serve, I thought he was over hitting the serve a little bit, fishing for aces because one thing about this Alcaraz serving performance is that he actually hit a lot of aces and had a lot of easy service games. It was those games where he didn't make any first serves, where
Yeah.
things kind of turned south on him. But he was actually serving really big and was very damaging. But I thought he got so insecure from the baseline that he felt the need to go for a little bit extra in a lot of different facets of his game.
Yeah, but that's good sound analysis. I would say I think he was insecure on his serve as well, despite some of the easy service games, because Jannik pressed him. I mean, think about it. Jannik broke him once each set, so 4 times. But there were also a lot of other games, lots of love 30s, break points. So I think that weighed on his mind too. There was one game, 40 love for Carlos, and he goes down break point
Yeah.
and bailed himself out. But that's not a great feeling. That's not a great feeling for him. So yes, you're right. There was the comfort level was there, but so sporadically. He's definitely added to his serve, Gill, a variety. I mean, we saw it in the Fritz match too, that he could be serving the 135s and winning aces, service winners, then slowing it down to 108 wide, serve and volley. There was a lot of mixture, and he tried to use that against Jannik too. But I thought Jannik was awfully well prepared for anything that was coming his way, and had a great day on the return.
It's a good point because the narrative for Carlos coming into the final was that the serve is much improved, and I don't think one match should change that. I think it's still
No,
true.
I do too. Oh, I completely. That's where I give Sinner such high marks, is that he despite the improvement in it, and everybody was talking about Alex Correia. I ran into him the day before, and that was one of the things that he was harping on after the Fritz match, how much he thought Carlos's service improved, and I think that's absolutely valid. But now, Sinner is arguably I think you can make an argument right now he's the best returner in the game.
Yeah.
Right now.
Yeah. Yeah. I can get behind that. I can get behind that for sure. I've always thought it looks very Djokovic like. His
Yes.
ability to on the stretch still drive the ball where so
Yeah.
many players would just have to block it. Um
Right.
and
Right.
hit something weak. And Sinner, even on the backhand especially, most players are taking their left hand off whenever they're stretched out. And Sinner can actually keep the left hand on and get some speed and some depth on it. So
And take it down the line too,
yeah.
and off that kicker in the ad court, which he did on a big break point. He does a lot of things well right now, and I'll be curious to see what Ferrero and Alcaraz come up with as they try to devise game plan for Jannik on the hard courts, or to do something about that serve, to feel like he can do a better job of getting into Jannik's service games. What solutions do they have?
Well, speaking of which, we don't need to go super long on this, but I did a mailbag earlier this week, and the most liked question was one that I didn't have a super confident answer on, so I just want to see how which way you go with it. Who will win their career Grand Slam first, Alcaraz or Sinner, as they're both now remarkably one away?
Well, you have to say that Alcaraz, he needs Australia, and Jannik needs Roland Garros, right? So Alcaraz is
Yes,
going to get the chance first, no matter
correct.
what. I just don't know what to expect from Carlos. Things have gone wrong. One year he had to miss the tournament. Then he had a pretty sound defeat against Zverev a year ago. Then he lost to Novak in four. This year we haven't seen him at his best over there yet. It still wouldn't shock me if he just started the year, if he maybe planned a little differently and played fewer exos at the end of this year and then put a big emphasis on trying to start the year with a big win in Australia. But I guess what I would say, slight edge Sinner, but it's almost a coin flip because of the fact that Carlos will get that first opportunity.
We had pretty much the same answer. So,
okay.
Yeah, I mean, we'll leave it at that. I want to go on to some other stuff.
Okay.
What did you think of Djokovic's level before the Sinner match?
Okay, well, I liked first round. I kind of discount a bit that he wasn't feeling well. You could see the doctor came out. He took the pills, but still, despite losing one tiebreak, the rest of the match was pretty straightforward. Then I thought he played quite well against Dan Evans and his countryman Kecmanovic. Bad start against de Minaur, and he had to bail himself out again in the fourth from 1-4 break point down. But overall, a good performance in windy conditions, by the way. And he never likes that wind. That was pretty severe winds that day, and he was bothered by it from the beginning. Double faulted twice in the first game to lose his serve, and that sent him on the wrong path in the first set. Then we go to the quarter against Cobolli, and I thought he would have liked to have played a little better there. He should have won the first set where he was up 5-3 and he didn't serve it out, and then he lost the tiebreaker. Played pretty well thereafter. But my thought at that point was, okay, look, those are maybe B performances from Novak against de Minaur and Cobolli. Not his best, but good. But he's trying to peak for Sinner, and it didn't hurt him to be out there about 3 hours each and against de Minaur and Cobolli. So I thought, all told, it was kind of perfect. A meaningless loss set in the first round, a couple of straight set wins, a couple of four setters, and he's well conditioned to come into Sinner. But of course, that terrible fall that he took, I honestly think that had to be the reason why the mobility was so below par against Jannik. And I don't think the way he played against Jannik had anything to do with the preceding rounds. I thought it was everything to do with whatever injury he was nursing, whatever was preventing him from changing direction. But I mean, you saw, Gill. First of all, I could feel it as soon as he lost his serve in the first set. My gut was telling me this is not going to go well for him today. Something's off. Something is off. And then we saw it with the movement. Then that stage in the second set where he might serve and volley 4 points in a row at one stage. I'm saying, this is crazy. This is not how he plays tennis. The serve and volley is a selective tool. He does it quite well, and on certain big points he likes to do it, but not point after point after point. So I thought that was too bad, because I would say the level was good enough to take him into the Sinner match and be very competitive. The odds would have been still slightly against a victory, but I thought he was going to be right in there. And going in, I thought it was going to be at least a four-setter. And I just don't think we saw the real Djokovic. How did you feel about it?
Same. I agree. The movement was a non-starter. There's no way you can beat Sinner moving like that. There's no way you can be competitive with Sinner moving like that.
Right.
So that was kind of the end of it. But it is this interesting conversation about how you weigh the freak fall against Cobolli with the overall pattern where Novak's body has not been as sturdy in the last year or so as what we're used to. And then I also thought it was interesting, and you've been in Novak Djokovic press conferences for as long as Novak has been in this game. So I'm curious what your thought is on this. Novak seemed reluctant to talk about the fall. And he was speaking in a lot of broad strokes about his body breaking down repeatedly in these majors. And I thought that was really interesting to hear.
Yeah, that was. No, it was absolutely candid too. In other words, especially when one guy asked him and tried to sort of attribute it to bad luck, misfortune. Right. And he said, no, it's not just misfortune, it's age. And I thought it's good. He needs to think that way. He needs to be honest with himself. And he knows just what you said. The accumulation over the last 2 years, that's not an accident if it keeps happening that many times. So he's got to weigh all that. As far as the specificity on the fall, I can only think that part of it was he didn't want to go harping on it to therefore take something away from Sinner. He wanted to be very careful about making it sound like, well, I could have beaten Jannik today, but look, that fall destroyed my chances. And so,
Yeah.
and also, Gil, what drives me nuts is the press conferences they're exasperating because people come in with their own agenda, and they have a right to. They all have different angles they need to pursue in their stories. They have a job to do. I get it. But there is so little asked about the match, so little asked that is specific, and so little follow-up. There's so few follow-ups from these reporters. Somebody should have pressed him more on that. Said, we know you don't want to make excuses, but please tell us how, you told us at the end of the Cobolli match that you hoped your physio could get you in shape. Tell us now, what the last day was like, but what was your feeling going out on the court? Did you feel going out on the court very negative and pessimistic given how your body was feeling? Nobody did that.
I was really frustrated with the press conference also, because my question also was that fall worse than your regular fall, or was it how your body reacted? Like, what did that fall actually feel like? And are you kind of harping on the age thing because when you were young, you would have taken that same fall and been fine? Like I'm curious his thoughts on that, and yeah, we didn't get much detail there, but anyway,
I think if he were sitting with us now, Gil, and this was off the record, that he would admit that. He would say that. He would have said, I could have taken this fall in 2012 or 2015, 2018, and I would have recovered better. That's why I'm so frustrated.
Yeah, I agree.
I think we know that, but whether he would have said it, I don't know. But the press conferences are just not illuminating, and he can be illuminating. He really can. I've seen times when he actually has told the moderator to go ahead and allow more questions. He likes to talk, and he likes to analyze, but we need some kind of. There needs to be. It gets back to the follow-ups. There needs to, and we need much more on the match that just was played. Period.
I want to run through some other players and might as well round out our semifinalists, and talk a little bit about Taylor Fritz. I predicted him before the year to finish 4 in the world. I was looking pretty silly for a while, although there were health issues. But he has a big grass court season. He wins 2 titles. He makes a Wimbledon semifinal. Now he's up to 7th in the race. It doesn't look all so bad. Do you consider him to be the 4th best player in the world, the 5th best player in the world, somewhere in that range?
Yes, and he's proved me wrong. I wouldn't have made your call. I thought I was predicting more of a 7 or 8 in the world this year. I thought it was going to be very hard for him to live up to the standards that he set last year. So I've been very impressed by this recent surge. And he didn't have good results early in the year, and he's overcome some injuries. But for him to follow up a U.S. Open final with a semi at Wimbledon, particularly under the circumstances that the grueling first 2 rounds, was very impressive. It was also impressive to me because I didn't like the few times I'd seen him play Carlos. I didn't like what I saw. I thought he seemed as outclassed by Carlos as he was by Sinner, and so I thought coming in, even as well as he was playing, I thought it was going to be hard to win. I was leaning towards straight. I thought maybe 4, but I was leaning straight, and I thought he did a terrific job. Played a great second set, and played a terrific 4th as well. And then, unfortunately for him, a tiebreak that was completely up for grabs went the other way because he was 4-1 down. Then he was 6-4 up with 2 set points and didn't win another point. Lost 4 in a row from there. So I thought he maybe could have. I don't know what your take was on that first set point at 6-4, but I thought he hit a really good serve. And Carlos hit the floating return fairly deep, but that Taylor didn't set up to be as aggressive as he needed to be on that point, which was too bad because I think had he done that, and he could have taken control. Instead, Carlos ended up getting to the net and playing a tricky volley, and Taylor couldn't pass him. And I thought that was too bad that he kind of gave himself such a possibility to have a 5th. I don't think he would have won the 5th, Gil, but I think he should have been in a 5th is my point. And, frankly, reading between the lines of Carlos's comments, I think Carlos felt the same way. I mean, he was proud of himself for pulling it out. But some of the remarks he made led me to believe that he thought he was a bit at Taylor's mercy at that stage, and he was just glad that he didn't have to go 5.
Taylor didn't play those points badly, but he did get a little bit safe on some forehands.
Yeah,
He
yeah.
got a little safe, and that's all you can say. But he also did some really good things in that point. He hit those points. He hit good serves. He hit good returns, and Carlos came up with stuff. But the loss was very encouraging to Alcaraz. The way he played Carlos. If I were to re-predict it, I would make him fifth. I'd put him after Draper.
Right, right, exactly, exactly. And we got to see how Jack finishes the year. That's like we also don't know exactly what to expect from Sasha, given the philosophical statement he made at Wimbledon about his state of mind and how he's feeling not about it just tennis but life right now. And he obviously was very down. Now he seems to be trying to make amends, and they're developing this relationship with Tony Nadal, and that's all good. But I'm not sure quite what to expect from Zverev the rest of the year. But I think that's a pretty good order, that it would end up being Zverev, Draper, Fritz in that order.
Well, let's talk Draper and then we'll go to Zverev. Of all the upsets, I felt that Draper was the one it felt the most significant, I'd say, at least from a storyline standpoint, but it still didn't reach a 9 or a 10 for me on the shock meter. Considering Cilic is such a danger, great grass court resume, and Draper still has to get better with heavy pressure in my view. I was concerned for him coming into this Wimbledon based on this being really the first time coming into this tournament, his home major, where he's expected to make a deep run.
Yeah, well, you had a right to be concerned, and he was pretty honest about it. He was honest about feeling rushed on his forehand. He basically was acknowledging that he didn't feel great on the grass at Queens either. That was just a gritty effort to get to the semis, and got him some preparation, but he didn't look commanding. And then, as you say, it's kind of a bad luck in a sense to play someone as good as Cilic on the grass on that particular day. So you can't really knock him hard for that one. But I like the fact that there was some self-criticism. He gave Cilic plenty of credit, but that he looked in the mirror and realizes he does need to change some things, improve some things on grass, as he believes he did very much improve on the clay this year. And we already knew what he could do on hard with that U.S. Open semi last year. So I don't know where you are on the meter of optimism with him, but I'm still very high on him.
I'm very high. I think Draper is great at self-evaluating, at being honest about what he needs to get better at. I buy into what he was talking about in terms of the grass. I think what he was alluding to, but he didn't flat out say, is that my forehand is not as good on grass as it is on some other surfaces. If you look at the tournaments where he's made a run this year, Indian Wells, slow, high bouncing.
Right.
Madrid, not so slow, but super high bouncing where that heavy spin has a huge effect. So sometimes we get into this trap where it's like we see a big server and a lefty even, and it's automatically this person loves grass, and then you miss certain nuances of other areas that might not be as well suited for grass. At the same time, Jack said the pressure wasn't a factor. I don't buy that.
No, I don't either. I don't buy it for a second. I do think, though, that there was reason for why we're optimistic. And the way, okay, the timing of the win over Carlos a year ago on the grass at Queens, I saw signs in the past before this year. And I also think what he needs to do, Gil, I still think, and it's true of Shelton, it's interesting. Here are two great lefty servers, and I don't think either one locates their serve as well as they could. And I think Jack, if he becomes better at the spot serving, that alone can make him lethal on grass. And he wasn't exploiting that as well as I don't think he was serving as well as he would have liked at this Wimbledon either, or at Queens. So that's another thing I think he can improve on significantly, in addition to the issues off his forehand. But the fact that he's addressing them, the fact that he didn't make the excuses, that he doesn't want to assign it to expectations of the British. I think that's all good because he's looking at himself in an honest way, and that's how you get better.
Yeah, it's he's on a good track. The rate of improvement's really good. So you mentioned Zverev. loses to Arthur Rinderknech. He's never done well at Wimbledon, which makes some sense in a lot of ways, although it's been, I think, more extreme than I ever would have predicted. I wouldn't have thought that Zverev at this point in his career would have never made a quarter at
Yeah,
Wimbledon. But
yeah.
he loses to Rinderknech, who's been playing really well. But the press conference is actually definitely what stands out as he opens up about his struggles, about not enjoying life on tour at the moment. And I will say I wasn't stunned to hear it because I do think if you're in Zverev's position and you've worked very, very hard for a long time, but in terms of achieving, you've been very much stuck in place and you've been dealt a lot of hard blows. It must be difficult to go to work every day like you've been doing and to continue to feel inspired, especially when the things around you have been kind of the same and stuck in place as well. So that was my read on it. And to see him go to Mallorca and start to work with Tony, and I don't know how official this is or how long term it is, but I think it's such a positive development for Zverev because I feel like he needs a spark and a shakeup.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. I felt the same way. I was pleasantly surprised to hear the news. The press conference and the commenting on his state of mind, it took me back to the reaction he had in Australia. He was so despondent, and he kind of needed to be lifted by the likes of Djokovic and others, reminding him of how good he is. But maybe that was the first sign of trouble for him. The fact that he took that one, that he was so devastated by that loss to Sinner. But yes, Tony Nadal. The only part of the plan I don't like is let Rafa stay in the background. That's fine. And if Tony wants to ask Rafa from time to time for his advice, but let Tony, if he's going to go forward, let Tony do the job. Tony should be the coach, and he will do far better, I believe, with Zverev than he was able to with Felix, because Rafa was still out on the tour, and I think that was a real issue. And they're playing at the French Open in a five-setter. It didn't make a lot of sense to me because Tony's heart was still with his nephew. Now he has no inhibitions, no restrictions. He's not strapped in at all, and he can really make use of his great knowledge of the game to help Zverev. And we know that his father has I think his father's been pretty dignified the way he sits there during the matches and soaks it all in. But I think he needs another voice. He needs another point of view, and good for him for finally realizing it.
Yeah, Alexander Sr., I don't have any problems with anything about the job he's done.
Right.
But maybe a change in energy might be helpful because that's how Alexander Sr. is. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you're looking for a little bit of a spark, somebody in the box that might be a little outwardly positive, a little more fiery, like that's not Sasha Sr. There's not a lot of a lot of overt positivity and energy coming from him. And I think Sasha could probably use that at this point.
Completely agree. And he Tony will provide that. It'll also be a new pair of eyes and a different outlook too. I mean,
Yeah.
Inevitably Tony's going to see the game just a little differently from his father. It shouldn't be it shouldn't be drastic, but that little bit could go a long way for Sasha at this stage. And I hope he gives it a fair trial, Gil. I mean, regardless of what happens at the U.S. Open, take it a bit further than that.
Yeah, and I'm not sure, I don't think it's been confirmed on either side exactly what it is. For all we know, this could be a little vacation to Mallorca and a training block.
Yeah,
But
you're right.
it'd be
But
nice if it were more.
I guess I'm strongly suspecting that there'll at least be a trial period. There'll at least be
Okay.
we'll see Tony in New York. I'll be surprised if we don't see Tony in New York.
All right. Tsitsipas also had a dark press conference. His expectations coming into Wimbledon already very low. So in that sense, it didn't feel that significant. But Tsitsipas alludes to retirement in his press conference. And then Ivanisevic totally overshadowed that and made the tone even darker. And it's definitely something that I want to get your take on. I like there were some things where Goran opinions may differ. Was it too harsh? Did it cross a line? But the overall directive of Ivanisevic to say, if your back's not right, stop playing and come back once your back is fixed. Like fix your back.
Yeah.
And the fitness, like emphasizing the fitness. I think that all just makes a lot of sense to me. I was thinking the same thing when he's struggling with the back. It's just why are we playing? Because it's been a problem for so long, and there hasn't been that time off. I'm also not worried about how Stefanos takes this. I think he can take that, and I think he'll appreciate the kick in the butt. I am worried about the family and how the family takes it.
In what sense? Elaborate on that one.
I don't think, based on history and based on the what I've discerned, I don't think Apostolos is going to appreciate how this all went down. And I don't think Julia.
Goran, you mean Goran's critique?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think that
Well,
might add to friction. And I'm worried about the dynamic there. I'm not worried about Stefanos. I'm worried
well,
about the people around Stefanos rejecting how this has gone down.
yeah, I get it. I get it. I believe that if your theory is right, and I subscribe to it, that Stefanos will go to his father and say, "No, it's okay. I can take this. I need to hear this." He's given me a criticism. You've criticized me a lot as well, but this is a different kind of criticism from somebody outside the family, and I'm more than willing to take it. If he conveys that to his father, I think that would put out any potential fire. Uh, I also agree that I think Goran's. I don't know if he went overboard necessarily. I think he also must have felt, why are you wasting my time? You brought me in here to try to help you, and I'd love to help you, but you got to get your body right and get your back right, and then let's try it again. And didn't he basically accuse him of not being professional? He was very, very tough.
He accused him of being out of shape.
Yeah, right.
Essentially, and the word was unprepared, but if you
Yeah,
read it in context, it actually means out of shape. And then the line, and this is where I think the colorful language added to the sensationalism, and he probably could have toned down the delivery of it. He said, I've never seen a more unprepared tennis player in my
yeah,
life.
right,
And then he
right.
said that with his knees, he's in better shape.
See, but that
So
what I would do is translate that. That's why I use the word unprofessional, unprepared.
yes,
I mean, it's sort of an extension of unprepared to be unprofessional. But I think actually Stefanos needed to hear it, and I'm sadly coming to the conclusion though that I don't know if he'll take a prolonged period off, or whether a back surgery would work, or whether that's what the doctors would recommend. But I'm getting increasingly worried that it might be essentially over for him. I just it's not too late in terms of his age, but he talks about the evolving game and how it's changing and what these players can do now. And that's not somebody who seems to think that he can make inroads again. And it saddens me to think that we saw him emerge in 2018. I mean, you should have a longer shelf life. You should have a longer life in the upper levels of the game than it appears he's going to have.
I think the ice is thin. And I think a lot of it is based on how is he going to receive this message, and is this Goran thing going to work? And if it doesn't, I think there's big trouble. And I think he needs to go back to the Babolat Pure Arrow, which I think was working. And I listened to his logic. I don't want to relitigate it, but his logic for switching back to the blade made no sense to me. Essentially, his reasoning was, well, we're back on the clay, and it's worked for me in the past. And it just didn't resonate with me. But
That doesn't make sense. Yeah, I
it doesn't
agree.
make much sense. I don't want to go into all of it again because my viewers, I think, largely have heard it.
Okay.
Um, Interestingly, Medvedev, who lost to Benjamin Bonzi, which snapped an impressive back-to-back streak of Wimbledon semifinals for him, he was the guy. We're talking a lot about press conferences here, but I don't know. It was just a lot of notable stuff at Wimbledon in terms of what players were saying. He didn't seem very worried at all. He had this upbeat press conference where he was basically saying, I think everything's totally fine. And the way I'm looking at this is, well, that makes sense. It makes sense that Daniil, and I'm happy for him, would not take this difficult period as heavily as Stefanos and Sasha, because he's been number one. He's won his major, and he didn't have the heavy expectations on his shoulders in the first place as a young player. So he has overachieved already. And I just don't think he puts the same kind of pressure on himself. I think that's part of why he's not feeling the same kind of despair after a disappointing Wimbledon result.
It's interesting to hear you say that you believe he's overachieved. I feel like he's slightly underachieved. In the sense, I just say that, Gil, in the sense that I would have thought he was good for 2 or 3 majors in his career, not just one. And obviously, he's lost a couple to Rafa in the finals, a couple to Novak in the finals. He's lost to Sinner in the finals. All great players. Yeah, I thought he was going to do slightly better. We might slightly disagree on that, but I feel. I also wonder, Gil, I'm curious to get your thoughts on whether that's something of an act when he says he's not that worried. I mean, he's gone through a difficult couple of years by his standards. So is he trying that to just sort of not have to go on, sort of deflect the media in a way, to fend them off, and just not have to answer a lot of questions about his disappointing results and try to resolve it internally and with his camp? I don't know. But I honestly did think, if you had told me after the 21 Open he'll never win another again, I would have said that's crazy. He's going to get it. He's going to get 1 or 2 more. So that's why I say I think I would just tip the scale to slightly underachieving.
Okay. Yeah. I'm thinking back to him as a young player.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's
who,
definitely true. That's definitely true.
yeah. So there were I guess, I mean, I think Alexander Zverev has been conditioned from 17 years old that he's
Yeah.
supposed to win slams.
Right. True. No, you're right. No, as a young guy, it was unimaginable.
Right.
And everything changed in the summer of 19 when he was final after final after final, and he'd gotten killed 3-in-love by Rafa in Canada. And then he goes out and takes him to 5 in the U.S. Open final. That's when everything changed for him. But yeah, no, you're right. Prior, the Daniil of 17 or 18, or I mean, he could never have imagined it, and nor could we.
Yeah. He's got some quirks in his game, and he's had to kind of work those things out as well. And I think that's also limited him a little bit. Like the forehand, nobody ever was going to pretend that that was a great weapon off the ground, for example.
Right.
But yeah, oh, was it an act? That's where you just went.
Yeah.
Or is it an act?
Yeah.
He basically said, I don't think this is very sound logic from an outsider standpoint, but he basically said, I would be worried if not for the nice run in Halle when he made the final and lost to Bublik.
Well, that's the thing, but you just said it. But even then, he made the final but lost. I mean, I think it would have made a huge. I would have bought it if he'd won Halle. And granted, he did beat Zverev in a well played match to get to that final. But he still didn't get the title, and I'm surprised that he could say that in the aftermath of then losing his opening round match at Wimbledon.
I agree. I was surprised to hear it too. My sense is that the expectations are actually just the bar isn't that high anymore for him, which is fine. But what I was kind of assessing in my own head was why not compared to Zverev, compared to Tsitsipas? Like, why is he in such a better place?
Yeah.
And I think it's about what they've achieved and also what the expectation was from a young age and how that has kind of that's perhaps oriented them a little bit differently. That's kind of my theory.
But the other thing, Gil, is that we've seen obviously we've seen him implode on the court at times. We've seen the anger come to the surface and the frustrations in a lot of these matches. So I think maybe there's a part of him now that's just saying, I'm going to go easy on myself. I've been beating myself up, and I'm done with that, and I'm just going to keep trying, and I'll let the chips fall where they may. Maybe that's what he's doing right now. But I must say, I'm saddened that we're having this discussion. Here were 3 guys, all of them that we thought were going to do more, right? I mean,
right.
Zverev, Tsitsipas, Medvedev. And you can attribute part of it is the story of the emergence of Sinner and Alcaraz, the greatness of those two coming along to dominate the upper levels of the game. But I don't think I would have ever believed that we'd be sitting here in the summer of 2025 talking about these guys and wondering where they're all going. Obviously, it's different. It's very different with Zverev from the other 2 right now. But nonetheless, still searching for that first major. I wouldn't have expected to be saying that either.
Me either. Lightning round on two other players. Cobolli, surprise finalist, but I was expecting a breakthrough from him at some point because I'm a big fan. Do you think he's a future top tenner?
Yes. Yes, I definitely do. I mean, that was a nice win over Cilic. It was a windy day when he beat Cilic. I think he benefited from the win, but that doesn't take anything away from it. No, and he acquitted himself quite well against Novak to the way that he battled back in the first set and how competitive he stayed. And also he went through that lull in the second, you could tell, where he was dealing with the injury and his game went down more than a level. But then he came back to play a good third and a very good fourth. So it's a terrific tournament. No, I don't think it's an accident. And I see top 10 as a definite possibility. I see him kind of along the lines of a Musetti, his countryman. I think he's going to be in that. He'll go into that territory of 7 to 10.
If he can figure out the serve, he's a heck of a baseliner.
Well, it's funny that you say that because Novak was very complimentary about his serve after the match.
I think Novak was shocked. I think the numbers, the data is not good with his serve.
Right.
And all throughout Wimbledon, it seemed like a different player with the serve. And I don't know how sustainable that is, but certainly it indicates that the potential is there in the future for him to be more consistent on that shot. But I just think top line of the scouting report on Cobolli is you don't need to worry about his serve, and then suddenly you have to worry about his serve.
Yeah, but so many gifts off the ground, speed, the temperament, I feel like that was not, I guess what I'm saying, I don't think it was no accident that he got to the quarters.
Agreed. I didn't think it would happen on grass for the first time.
Yeah.
But that's the only item that surprises me because I think he's underlooked and really, really good.
Yeah,
the other one.
Yeah.
Has Alexander Bublik done enough in the last 2 months to convince you of anything? I'm going to be vague and just say of anything.
No, he hasn't. I mean, I guess in my mind, that was a resurgence, and it might end up being the best tennis he's ever played in his life, and he might not replicate it again. I lean toward that. I hope I'm wrong because he's good. He's enjoyable. He's such an original that you'd like to see him hang around and be in the mix. But I that's my assessment. We'll never see him play quite that well again.
I'm torn because mentally it is what it is with him, and there's just going to be these crazy ups and downs. I do think forehand-wise, he's kind of figured something out with the new racket, and it just looks like a different forehand to me recently. And I'm thinking there might be some sustainability in that. Regardless, still somebody who I think will be really happy if he's able to just hang inside the top 20 for any kind of extended period.
Yeah, I agree. And, he was unable to follow up on all the great things he did in Roland Garros and on the grass and beating Sinner on the grass and unable to make good on it at Wimbledon, which was too bad. But I agree. But by just the way you're characterizing it with him, with this top 20, I mean, somebody who's going to go somewhere. I forget what was the word you used again, expecting anything or the aspirations have to be higher, I think, and the commitment has to be there more consistently than I believe it will be with him.
Yeah, makes sense. All right, we will end it there. Steve, always a fantastic chat with you after these majors, and I look forward to doing it again after the U.S. Open.
Well, Gill, I feel like we're two guys, sitting at that bar, and we're not drinking scotch. We're having Pepsi Cola, and we're really digging into these matches, and it's always a great pleasure.
I don't drink soda, but it doesn't matter what time of day, Steve, I'll have a coffee. I don't care if it's 5 p.m., I'll have a coffee.